All right, today we're talking about Hellblade 2. I had this video planned for last week, but last week we know what went down. So this week, it's incredibly relevant to talk about Hellblade 2, which is due out in over a week. And I already know what some of y'all are thinking. We've had the weekend to recharge, refuel, and some of you are sitting there going, you know what, Matty? You're just hating on Xbox now. It's not my fault that only like 30K of you showed up for the Hellblade 2 video where I was very positive on what the game was doing. Today, though, we talk about something kind of strange going on with this game. The marketing cycle just beginning. Obviously, with the information going on with Xbox Game Studios and the changes they're making to their business, we worry about the future a bit of Ninja Theory. But also, I want to talk about why I think the way people are interpreting Hellblade 2's lack of marketing isn't really necessarily due to a let's send this thing out to die. Don't get me wrong, though. I agree with the consensus. I'll get into that as well. But I also think it's because of the size of the game itself, which we'll get into in detail. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome. If you're new here, consider subscribing. But first, a word from our sponsor. The following video is sponsored by Factor. Warm, sunny days are calling your name. It's time to go outside and stop focusing on meal prep and all that stuff. You need Factor. Or maybe you just need them because you want to spend more time playing video games. Whatever you want in your life, Factor is going to make it more convenient while hitting your wellness goals. Just in time for that summer bod. For me, I've been focusing a lot more on cardio lately because I've been grinding out my work. We're trying to hit a development deadline for my game. And so I need to make sure I got some quick meals that are good for me on the go. And with Factor's fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved meals, they're doing just that for me. What did I love this week? Jalapeno lime cheddar chicken. Took me 2 minutes just to warm up right there in the microwave. No shopping, prepping, cooking, cleaning up, nothing. Just boom, great meal, ready to go. This thing is absolutely delicious. Cannot say enough positive things about it. And this is letting me dial in on what needs to get done without forgetting to eat, which is sometimes what I do when I get so busy. So what are you waiting for? Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code MattyPlays50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next box. That's code MattyPlays50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first Factor box plus 20% off your next box while subscription is active. And what's the problem? What are people saying? What's the scuttlebutt? Well, right now, Xbox is beginning a, quote, marketing campaign for Hellblade 2. According to Aaron Greenberg, if we're to start to believe Xbox execs, there's a global paid media campaign ready, a cinema launch program ready, out-of-home advertising, brand partnerships, a special activation from Iceland, and so much more on the way. The reason people are deliberating over whether or not Hellblade 2 is going to get any marketing is, again, it's coming out very soon. There is a level of anticipation of, hey, we've been waiting for this thing since the announcement of the Xbox Series X. This has been in development since 2017, 2018. It's been cooking for a while. So what's going on here? Some new updates we got are things like a dynamic background on the Xbox Series X that you can see right here. Pretty cool. We're getting some tweets here, like, immerse yourself in Senua's journey. You actually get a link to the Xbox Wire post. You can play it day one with Game Pass. We can go to the Xbox website, and right there on the splash screen, you get Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. Why is this significant? Well, Xbox put out a picture talking about Hellblade 2, and it just said, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, May 21st. No link, no trailer, no nothing, just, hey, game exists. And as you can see in the replies, people were really having at it. Like, I can't believe they also closed their marketing department. Someone also linked down below the Xbox page for Senua's Saga to pre-order the game since Xbox didn't do that. And when you combine this lack of marketing and just a variety of tweets I'm showing you with what's been going on with Xbox Game Studios, people draw what I think is a very understandable conclusion. What we saw last week was a major pivot in the Xbox business that's been changing a lot in 2024. We already saw the multi-platform push. Now we're seeing here a pretty significant shift where smaller games, even ones that are very successful and review well, like Hi-Fi Rush, are not enough for this new perspective, this new set of optics that's being put upon Xbox's business where it needs to do more. It's focusing on big, high-profile IP. And I'm not necessarily certain that Hellblade qualifies as that. And I don't say that to just single out Ninja Theory. We've talked about it with Psychonauts and Double Fine. We've talked about it even with Avowed and Obsidian. I'm not sure if these qualify quite like things like Fallout, Call of Duty, Halo, Gears, and so on and so forth actually do. And more it's becoming apparent as I've taken this weekend to think about it a little bit instead of just constantly talking about it, is that Microsoft is really taking the wheel from Xbox here, and it almost doesn't matter who's in the CEO chair to a degree, although I think some changes and some shakeups are definitely required. But what we're learning here is this is a lot of Microsoft stepping in and trying to collect some money from that Activision acquisition. And so the fear is that with this lack of marketing, Hellblade 2 is being sent out to die, and that will lead to the closure of Ninja Theory, because as we learned in previous reports, what happened with Arcane Austin when they started to pitch for a new Dishonored game, what happened to Tango Gameworks when they started to pitch for Hi-Fi Rush 2, they got shut down because Xbox would have had to hire for these different projects. And that's something that they're really not doing right now. In fact, they are shrinking their business in ways and trying to eliminate what they would call redundancies. So with that perspective in mind, you also see that with Tango Gameworks, a year before they were closed down, Shinji Mikami had left the studio. And then you see here with Ninja Theory that co-founder Tamim Antianades had left the studio pretty much out of nowhere. This was revealed during an Xbox preview event where press got hands-on time with Hellblade 2. And he just wasn't there. This was originally reported by Polygon and was eventually revealed, oh yeah, I left, by the way. I made the mistake of when Shinji left and with Pete Hines left going, oh, these are just dudes at the end of their career. But you see Shinji starting up a new studio and working with other Japanese developers. Pete Hines has stayed out of the business, but I can't just look at this and gloss over and go, oh, maybe he's done. It definitely deserves a little bit more of a critical eye looking upon this type of information. So I know this has been a lot of dooming in the early going, but you need to just understand where gamers are coming from. What is the reason for all this skepticism surrounding Hellblade 2? What I can certainly tell you as of right now is most of it does not have to do with the actual product. I think visually, we can all agree, this game looks stunning. I think Hellblade 1 just speaks for itself. It's not a game that I would call a replay game. Like, I thought about replaying Hellblade 1 before 2, but it's just not a game that I think plays well a second go around. It's almost like a one-time experience style game because of the puzzles and the effect the story has on you and that kind of ride you're going on and not knowing what it's going to deliver to you. I think that does a lot for the game, where, especially when the combat wasn't phenomenal, going back to it a second time around wasn't super appealing. But I think Hellblade 1 really speaks for itself. And so Hellblade 2, I think you can almost assume that this should be a pretty good game. Outside of what I read in some previews mentioning things like puzzles, which I found to be a little bit concerning because I think that was what was a big detriment to the pacing of the first game. Otherwise, I'm really looking forward to this. They're talking a lot about how the combat's better. Each fight, you're really fighting for your life. So right now, the worry is not about the game. It's about the optics surrounding the game and how Xbox may not be setting it up for success. And obviously, seeing that if Hi-Fi Rush couldn't move the needle, then it's pretty hopeless to think that Ninja Theory could with Hellblade 2, and then we don't know the fate of that studio afterwards. Okay, so a lot of setup there. Now I want to get into my point of the argument, because I think there's a lot of fair points as to why people think Xbox is sending this game out to die effectively. Like, it's a means to an end. The game has changed. The plan has changed from what was pitched back in 2018 when Ninja Theory, among others, was acquired. Now with Activision in the fold, we're getting bigger studios. So the game has changed. My interpretation of the events is I think there are two truths here. I think number one, Hellblade 2 is definitely being set up for failure. I'm not seeing any trailers. I'm not seeing any looks at the game in a meaningful manner. I'm not hearing any buildup of interviews, of hype. I'm seeing a little bit of Xbox wire posts here or there, tweets, but that's not going to do it. We all know that's not going to cut it. That's not going to move the needle. And I think that's because when you look at the stats, things like Starfield didn't move the needle for Xbox. So again, why would Hellblade 2 do so? I love what I'm seeing with the game, but I think we got to be realistic with what's happening here. So yes, part one, I do agree with. I do think Xbox is setting this game up for failure. At the same time, number two is the game kind of also set itself up for failure based on how Ninja Theory initially marketed this game. And also, I think you could blame Xbox for this. So when the game was first revealed, it was alongside the Series X. Now, my interpretation of that moment there, in that pocket where we did not know what the Xbox Series generation would turn out to be, was, oh yeah, this is this newly acquired studio. Hellblade 1 was a little $20 game that was about 6 hours long. They spent a lot of time crafting it, but maybe they got a sequel ready a little bit faster. This is probably going to be a launch game for the Series X. Yeah, way off on that. By the way, no launch games, which is awful. But yeah, I thought that was what was going to happen. Then we see Hellblade again. Okay, this is a gameplay reveal at the Game Awards wow, this looks beautiful, but many people thought it was just cutscenes, maybe a compliment to Xbox and Ninja Theory. But yeah, at the time, like, this may have been the best looking game the industry had ever seen to that point in time. Now, Unreal Engine 5 has done its thing. We've seen a lot of lookers. Maybe that's not the case nowadays, but Hellblade 2 still certainly is a looker. Okay, so you fast forward a little bit. You get to the Xbox showcase, and we get a Hellblade 2 cutscene. Like, we see a little bit more of the game. And at this point, there's a little bit of fatigue setting in. Like, okay, it's time to give us, you know, a little bit of a release date or window at least. Now it's starting to get weird. We're seeing so much of this game, but no real release date attached to it. Now, the assumption at this point in time, and I understand and admit this is purely anecdotal, but I guess you'll have to take my word for it as someone who has been doing Xbox coverage for years now, is that people thought Hellblade 2 was going to kind of be the God of War moment for Xbox, where this game was going to be bigger, badder than anything you had previously seen in Hellblade before. The way it was being marketed, the continuous showing up of it, it just didn't make sense why a game that was going to be like 6 hours long has now earned itself 3 trailers, including one with the announcement of the Series X. Like, that's a pretty bold statement for the game. 6 months later, you get another trailer for Hellblade 2, this time at the Game Awards 2023, this time with a lot more combat, a lot more gameplay. This is the trailer really fans have been asking for, and that was really nice. But this time, no release date, just a release window, but hey, it's something. It wasn't until we got to the developer direct that we were sitting there watching this breakdown of the game, and then they announced that they're doing AAA independent games, meaning that Hellblade 2 is going to fall around the same length as Hellblade 1, which is like an 8 to 10 hour game, 6 if you really know what you're doing. What this did to myself and many other fans of Xbox is it immediately flipped the perspective of what this game was and what we had seen of it. It went from a situation of, oh, we haven't seen anything yet. They're holding back for like a big developer direct showcase too. Oh, it's like 8 hours long. We've seen a lot of this game because we just got our 4th viewing of it. So I feel like, pardon my crudeness, they kind of blew their load early with this game, showing so much of it, almost insinuating that it was going to be a way bigger game than it actually was, when it's roughly going to be the same size as Hellblade 1, maybe a little bit bigger, probably a lot prettier and a lot more fun to play, you'd hope. And so my theory, my working theory, not confirmed, is that I believe Xbox is at a point where, yo, this is like a short game. Guys, we can only show so much of this thing before we start to spoil big moments of the game. And you'd have to imagine if Hellblade 2 cherry-picked a random cutscene of Senua staring into a reflection in a pool of water, you'd have to look at that and imagine like they have to be very careful with what they select for an extremely story-driven video game. No doubt Hellblade 2 will get its launch trailer, but I think that's why we're not seeing much of it on a visual front. I think that's why when it came to the previews that were done by press, we didn't get a big new gameplay blowout because you've already seen a bunch of trailers for by that point in time. Now you're going to see more from what was reportedly the first 45 minutes to an hour of this game. It just becomes a situation for now you have spoiled so much of the game in an attempt to market it that you've created a new problem for yourself. This is not set up to defend Xbox, but I just think I see a lot of people connecting the dots on one end, which I've already stated I agree with, but I do think there's a whole other element to this argument on what's going on with Hellblade 2, which is I think they screwed up early. I think they showed too much early. And given what we learned with Redfall, where Xbox did not have enough studio involvement there to know that that game was even in the state it was in when they shipped it, you have to wonder if they didn't check in on Hellblade 2 on just the scale and scope of this game. You'd hope so, given like they're signing the check, they're giving the resources, they're helping fund this thing, that they would have an idea of, oh, this is going to be a big game, or oh, this is going to be a smaller game. We don't know quite yet. But nonetheless, that's my read of the situation. Is it's two things here. It's, I think, Xbox not really helping the game out much because the plan has definitely changed, but also that Hellblade 2 has shown off a lot more than we understood it did because of how small of a game it is, and that it wouldn't hurt, in my opinion, to show off some more combat, some more meaningful encounters, and maybe one more trailer, but we may get that closer to launch. But that's why I think Xbox and Ninja Theory are operating the way they are, with a lot of Xbox Wire posts, a lot of mental health promotions, a lot of thematic promotions, that sort of thing. I think that's why they're going in the direction they are. But that's my read of the situation here. No doubt that Hellblade 2 situation is a little strange, but I'm looking forward to the game nonetheless. I will be playing it. I will be reviewing it, hopefully. So keep an eye out for that coverage, because this is a game that went from, to me, like already important to like extremely important. It reminded me a bit of what happened to Starfield, where the importance of that game became a metric ton higher because Redfall came out and was awful, and the people immediately got worried for Starfield and went, well, what's going on with that then? And so now it's the same situation. Xbox shuts down a bunch of studios, and you see this next indie style, small, artsy fartsy game coming around. It's like, well, why aren't you talking about that, Xbox? And I think we all know the answer, but I wanted to add just my own analysis to the bunch here. So what do you think of what I had to say here? Let me know down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Have you seen more Hellblade 2? Again, this is all anecdotal, so I've seen takes online of like, I'm actually seeing a decent amount of Hellblade 2, but I've seen a lot of people saying like, I didn't even know it was coming out soon. So let me know down below. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.